Okay, we're going to we are going to be learning a Maamar. It's the final Maamar that we have from the Rebbe on Parshas Chayei. It's from the year 1991, Tafshin Aleph, or the end of 90. Excuse my cold, so my voice may be a little low. The point of this, it's a fascinating Maamar. The point of this Maamar is to understand the opening verse of this week's parsha, which has many Hasidic discourses in analyzing the first verse, the Chayei, the 127 years, and the end of the verse that says that Shnei Chayei, these are the years of Sarah. And the point of the Maamar is, and we'll get to it eventually, is the idea of focus. Again, like we learned last week about Avram Avinu's focus to go to his guests as opposed to sitting with Hashem. Here is the underlying focus of a person knowing his or her avodah, his or her service in this world, and how at the end of the day it's not that you go down to do something, but if you're doing what you should be doing, that's the highest place you could be at that moment, as opposed to saying, I'm going to lower myself to do something. Although I could be somewhere else, I'm going to lower myself to engage in someone, teach someone. And what we learn from Sarah's life is that if there's something that you should be doing, that is the highest thing you could be doing at that moment. Okay, let's see it inside the Maamar. So the pasuk says, "Vayiyu Chayei Sarah." These are the days of Sarah, and they are Meya Shana. She lived 100 years, singular. Esrim Shana, 20 years. V'Sheva Shanim, 7 years. So instead of saying she lived 127 years, it says she lived 100 years, 20 years, and 7 years. Shnei Chayei Sarah, these are the days of Sarah, the life of Sarah, or the years of Sarah. We know the many points that have been mentioned about this verse from the various Rebbes and the various Maamarim, the Hasidic discourses. Heichel midrushay Rabbeinu Hazaken, starting from the Alter Rebbe. So the Alter Rebbe analyzes the wording, the chosen wording of the verse, how the wording is singular, plural, etc. We had added to the Alter Rebbe the Hagois, the notes, will be Urim and exclamations. From the Rebbe's following the Alter Rebbe, who started with his pointing out the various ideas that have to be explained in this verse. And this includes the Rebbe Rashab. Why does the Rebbe point out the Rebbe Rashab? Because today, the 20th of Mar Cheshvon, is the Baal Yom HaYiladas. This is the birthday of the Rebbe Rashab on Chof Mar Cheshvon, the 20th of Mar Cheshvon. So we're learning this Maamar, which is kind of recognizing that today is the birthday of the Rebbe Rashab. Shebemispar Meya, when we talk about the 100 years of Sarah, Bemispar Esrim, when we talk about the 20 years of Sarah, Nokit Shana, the verse uses the singular. 100 Shana is a singular for years. Meya Shana ve'esrim Shana, Lashon Yachid, which is the singular. Ubemispar Sheva, but when it comes to the 700, Meya Shana, Esrim Shana, Sheva, it says 7, 127. The 7 is Nakat Shanim plural. Sheva Shanim Lashon Rav in plural. So that's the initial question. Gam, also we want to understand, Mahu Oimrei Shnei Chayei Sarah. What does it follow? The pasuk finishes off, these are the years of Sarah. The pasuk already starts off, these are the years of Sarah. So seemingly, besides the question of what does it say, Meya Shana, Esrim Shana, Sheva Shanim plural, it should just say, Vayiyu Chayei Sarah, Meya Shana ve'esrim Shana v'Sheva Shanim. Why does it have to complete the verse with saying, and these are the years of Sarah? We opened the verse saying these are the years of Sarah. So what are we adding? After the pasuk opens up and says, these are the years of Sarah, and says that she lived 127 years, he should have been finished. The verse should have been finished. And why does the pasuk repeat itself? Shnei Chayei Sarah, these are the days of Sarah. Okay. So we have two questions. The singular language, Hebrew Lashon HaKodesh, when it comes to the 100 years and the 20 years versus the 7 years in plural? And also, why does the pasuk repeat itself again? These are the years of Sarah. And another question one has to understand. Halimid v'hayra mishnei chaye Sarah avodas kol echad ve'echad misrael. What is the lesson that every single individual could learn from the life of Sarah? And these are the days of Sarah. Ki yadua, as it's known, shekol inyonei Torah. Torah is not a storybook. It's not coming to tell us a story that Sarah lived 127 years, notwithstanding of all the other discourses and Zohar that explains why, specifically of all the women in Torah, Sarah is the only one that we learn about the years of her, how many years she lived. The fathers we know, but not the mothers. Only Sarah is mentioned her complete years, not even Chava, the first woman. So why? So aside for that, what is the lesson in general that we could learn? Because everything in Torah is about a lesson. Gam Sipura Torah, even if there's a story in Torah, they have to be a lesson to every single individual for them personally. When I open this verse and I read the verse, it's something that I have to learn and apply to my life, knowing that these are the days of Sarah. And what is that lesson? Well, Befrat is specifically not just anything in Torah, but when it comes to Maisa Avos v'Imahis, when we talk about the fathers and the mothers of the Jewish people, and Sarah is the first of the mothers. Shehem Simon, that the fathers and the mothers are a sign, v'nesinas koyach, meaning a sign means that they empower levanim to the children. So surely that the whole life of the parents, meaning Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, and Bilhah and Zilpah, are not just that they had lives in Torah and therefore we have to apply it, but their lives are specifically connected to their children and they're empowering to their children. So they have to be empowering with every part of their life has to be an empowering message that we could live with. Not just that they lived, and that itself is empowering, but even the details that the Torah tells us about their life has to be empowering for something that we could understand. Okay, so the Maamar continues. So what's explained in the various Chasidic discourses is as follows. This pasuk is talking about the entire chain of creation. From this pasuk, we can have it as general understanding. Like I said before, it's going to give us a perspective of how we view life and how we view our specific mission in this world. It shows us how the entire world in general was created, and also when it comes to the specifics of the person, of the individual. Every single individual Jew could understand their story, so to say, in life through this verse of the life of Sarah. The message the person has to take is that one's service has to be number one is that the Maamar explained that when we look at this, when we look at the life of Sarah, the fact that the Torah specifies she lived 120 and 7 means the way we approach our life has to be also broken up into three groups of 100, 20, and 7. And the 120 are in the singular, shanim, shana, and the Sheva, the 7, is in the plural, shanim. And that's how we have to break our life up. Our life is also made up of these three categories of 120 and 7, even if we don't live the actual years of 127 years. Kamay Basar, just like it's in Sarah. What's this all mean? The Isa B'Zohar, the Zohar teaches us like this. These are the days of Sarah. Meyashana Kalala Dekula Kuchabricho, that the inclusiveness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Iskalu Mi'asri Ilah Stima, that is coming from this hidden place, the Kol Stima, hidden of all hiddenness, B'meya, B'raza D'meya Bracha B'chol Yoma. It's in the secret of the concept of 100, and to understand the secret of the 100, the inclusiveness of the 100, we understand in the 100 blessings a person is supposed to make that was instituted. Like King David, a person should make 100 blessings a day. So the 100 blessings a day is the idea of the 100. And what's the 100? The 100 is this general, he calls it the general rule of God that is represented by the completeness of the number 100. We'll explain in a second why is the number 100 a complete number. It's not a complete number made up of the components of 1 to 100, but there's the klal, there's the general inclusiveness of that general completion that the number reaches with it when it comes to 100. It means you could have the 100 and say, I have 100 pennies and 100 pennies. So you can say I have $1, and $1 happens to be 100 pennies makes $1. But once you have 100 pennies, you have $1. Dollar is its own entity. So too, the completeness of the number of 100 is a completeness of all God, of the secret of everything. Isn't that completeness of the number 100? We'll explain what that means in a second. So he says, V'chein esrim shana. So too, when it comes to 20 years. Begin kach siv shana raza diyechuda delay isparish machshava v'yubla. Talks about the hidden. Again, we'll explain in a second what is the 20 years also. So there's a general klal rule or inclusiveness of with the oneness of God in the number 100. The second level is 20. That's also a deep number, the number 20, and then it goes down to 10 to 7. We'll see what those three categories are. So he says also, that's the singular. That's why by 20 and 100 it says shana singular, because there's that klal, that general rule, that inclusiveness, that oneness that's in both the number 20 and the number 10 and the number 100. He says the leisparish machshavi v'yuvul alman, that the thought is not explained or articulated at all into the world. And then you have sheva shanim, 7 years, and there we say 7 plural, meaning to say by saying shana singular, it's not it wraps, it makes 1 the number of 20, and even deeper than that, it makes 1 the number of 100. That it's shana, it's only 1. If it was plural, it'd say shanim in Hebrew. The fact that it says shana makes it a single entity. Is the single entity of the number 100, the single entity of the number 20, and that's so deep that it can't be articulated in any idea, in any thought. And then you have the 7 years plural, because the 7 years are made up of 7 components, which we're going to learn are the 7 midos, the 7 attributes, which we know the 7 attributes, which is zer ampin, the small complexion, is already made up of division. The initial part of division comes in the midos. Elon isparshim v'nafka mikol, and they come and explain, and they come out of the rule. So the prat, the details of the 7 years are from the inclusiveness of 20 and even deeper the inclusiveness of 100. B'dinai, because it gets separated when you have judgment, which is one of the midos of the 7. V'rachme, and you also have compassion, which is tiferes, right? Become a sitchin v'orchin in different ways. Begin kach, therefore, when it comes to the 7, which is divided in the 7 attributes, it comes lower into 7, and then it gets divided into details. Doesn't have the inclusiveness of the number 20 and the number 100, and therefore it no longer says it in a singular number, it says a plural, because it is made up of 7 different components, which are the 7 sheva shanim, the plural of the number 7. Okay. Bekulu ikrotaim, and all of them together are called life. Meaning to say, we say Shnei Chaye Sarah, right? These are the days of Sarah. Chayim means the life of Sarah. So these are the life of Sarah. The life is both the inclusiveness of the number 100 and the number 20, and the division within the number 7. It's all Chaim, it's all life, it's all alive. Okay. What does this mean? So that doesn't explain. When we say the complete number of 100 represents the crown. Because the keser is made up of all the 10 attributes, not as there's a division, but they come together to make 1, and each one of the 10 is made up of 10, like we have in the spheres, Omer Chesed of Chesed, Gvura of Chesed, Feres of Chesed. Those are just the midos, those are just the attributes. But when you have 10, you include in that also the intellectual 3 of Chachma, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. 10 times 10 is 100, and when they become complete in a single number, that's the crown. And the crown in general represents, in the person we'll learn in a second, so 10 times 10 is 100. Where is this represent in the person? When it comes into the level of the crown, is not the individual components of the 1 times the 10 times 10, which is 100, and each 10 is made up of 1, but it is the ratzon, which is chetzanis haketzer, the external of the crown, v'tainug, and pleasure, which is pnimis haketzer. So he goes on to explain that what is the idea of a crown, and that's why the crown sits on top of the head. Meaning to say, it's almost like you can't You can't identify any character in the crown. It's not thinking anything, doesn't have intellect. It doesn't seemingly have any emotions. It's not the internals of the person. It's chitzonius. It's makib. It's encompassing. But the crown is everything. The one who wears the crown is the king, right? Even though seeming what's in the crown, but the crown is everything. And in the person, the crown, what's the crown is the want, which is the ratzon of a person, what a person wants, which is not want based on ideas or feelings. It's a want that's above ideas and feelings because it's above intellect, and it's made up of the desire of a person. Tainuk, a pleasure, what a person takes pleasure in, is not something you can articulate or explain why you like something. When a certain person says, "I like this food, I like this taste, I like this style," right? It's not something you could try to explain it, but at the end of the day, is what you like is unlike what someone else likes. Even notwithstanding of all your arguments, you could argue with someone how much you enjoy a tuna fish sandwich. And the person who doesn't like tuna doesn't like tuna. I mean, it's not, he or she doesn't like it. It's nothing to do. There's nothing at the end of the day you could explain to change that. You could just articulate what you enjoy about it and why you enjoy it, etc. But if someone has a different taste or a different joy, takes joy in something else, that person has a different joy. Tanya creates ratzon. If you enjoy something, then you have a want for that thing. And then goes the chachma, the intellect that tries to figure out how to go about getting it. And then you have the feelings that you connect emotionally to the desire. But it all starts from Keser. Keser starts from the desire, meaning to say where God wants creation, what God wants with creation. Although the world comes into creation from Chachma, Bereshis, Bara Elikim, God created the world with Chachma, with wisdom. That's only the way the system went into creation. But what motivated that there should be creation starts with Tanuk, pleasure, that God has a pleasure based on the idea that we will make a dwelling for Him in this world, and therefore once he identifies that gives Him pleasure. What gives God pleasure is that there should be a place of separation, and in that place of separation, we're going to reveal godliness. So once he has that desire, the desire creates a will. The will creates a plan, and the plan starts with Bereshit, that the world comes into existence. But why does the world come into existence? Only because he has a pleasure in what's going to be accomplished when the world comes into existence. So he says, that's what 100 represents, and that's why it's singular, because the pleasure and the ratzon, which are both two components within the crown, the pleasure and the want, there's one idea. And yes, in order to get to that idea, they will have to be eventually broken down into parts. And therefore, you're going to have judgment, and you're going to have kindness, you're going to have compassion. All that creates an environment that feeds to the pleasure, to the tainuk. But the pleasure is one. That's why we say shana, mea shana. It's only 100 years because it's based on one. It's though it's made up of 100. But the pleasure itself is in a oneness. Okay, so that's why 100 is singular. What's with the 20? What's the 20 represent? It says ve'esim shana kaya chachma bina. In chachma and bina, in wisdom and understanding, it says shekol echad, each one of wisdom and understanding. Kol miyud, also wisdom is made up. Chachma has 10 components. Chachma of chachma, bina of chachma, das is of chachma. Kindness within wisdom, judgment, severity, boundaries within wisdom, compassion within wisdom, connection within wisdom, perseverance, acknowledgement, malchus within wisdom. So each one is made up of 10, but it's still only singular. Wisdom and understanding is also singular. We say esrim shana, 20 years in the singular in Hebrew, which because it's the moichin, it's the mind. The Rebbe says in the footnote in the brackets, although that there's other places that says that within the intellect itself, there is the conscious intellect, and there's the intellect that creates emotions, and there's the intellect beyond emotions, and that's where the 100 number is, not in the crown, but in wisdom itself. You do a shechidus b'malchus asirius b'zah umeyes ba'ava. There's the concept that the single, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, is within idea of Malchus kingship, where things are divided. Assyria is tens, groups of tens, which is like 20, is in the Midos, and 100 is in intellect. So as we get deeper into the character of the person, we have much more small components of the 100, but although it makes a klal, it makes a rule. Ba'alofim, and the thousands are in Keser in the crown. Nevertheless, he says, Va'piza yesh leimar, Shemei Hashan hu moichem betzim, that the difference between 100, if you want to say 100 is also an intellectual number, not a crown number. Nevertheless, it's the essence of the intellect, not an expression of the intellect. The Esrim Shan, and the 20 years, hu moichem hashaychel amidus, is the expression of the intellect, how it feeds and creates the emotional response. Asiriyos v'zah, and therefore it says, when it says that the numbers of the groups of 10 are in Zer Ampin, that is not that it's itself, it's the emotions itself, but it's the intellect that feeds, that creates the emotions. But let's skip the brackets, it's a bit more complicated. So we'll continue. Ubishneim Nemar Shana. So why do we say at the end, even by the intellect, by wisdom and understanding, also the singular? Okay, if it's already part of the character, the internal of a person, the intellect, although doesn't have the same expression and sort of say connection maybe to feelings, which are the emotions, but nevertheless it's what the person understands. It's already part of the character of the person versus, so to say, the desire. The desire is much harder to understand a person's character from their desire. How a person is going to get to that desire, plan and act and go and create a plan forward, is, you could say, a smart person knows how to do it, or a person with talent has one way of doing it. But to say that the desire is a way to understand, to identify a character of a person in their desire, is less understandable than it's less a way of us understanding the capabilities of a person in what they desire than how they go about acting on that desire. Chachma, wisdom, is already a person's using their character, their wisdom, and they're understanding how to act on that desire. So they're already seeing character of a person. Smarter people have a better way, or certain people have a better way or a different way to do it. So why are we talking in the singular when it comes to already things of the mind, of the intellect, which is already the character of the person? So b'shneim nemer shana, mea shanu esim shana, lashon yachid, the singular. He says, because b'keser, both when it comes to the crown, which is the mea, which is the inclusiveness of the 100, he says, because intellect and wisdom, that in the intellect itself, within the part of the wisdom and understanding, that, like it says, trade brain, like two friends that can't separate, that Chachma and Bina need each other. They're very singular. They're not. You don't see so much the character of the different emotions, although the chesed in Chachma is there, but it's hard to identify the different characters of the brain as it is to define and understand the different characters of the emotional system. And therefore, he says it's still in the singular. They become one. It's 20 shana, it's 1 year. We don't even say 20 of Chachma and Bina, because Chachma and Bina themselves, between each other, are so one of wisdom and understanding. They're so connected, wisdom and understanding, that 20 is only a single number, as opposed to saying 20 should be at least two numbers. You have wisdom and understanding. It's two sets of 10. Never mind the 10 components within the wisdom and understanding. But no, because wisdom and understanding are trey rain, delay misparshin, they're like friends that can't separate. You're so interconnected that the wisdom feeds the understanding, and understanding understands the wisdom, that it's still a singular number. So there's no separation between them within the intellect itself. And therefore it's called Shana, singular, Esrim, even though it's two sets of 10, we call it Shana, the singular. However, the midas already is different. Sometimes you're in this mood, sometimes you're in that mood. It's very much, you have the chesed running one time, you have the gvura running in another place. Therefore it says V'sheva Shanim, and it says Sheva, the 7, which is already the emotional part of the person, the 7 emotional character traits. Then it says Shanim, plural, Koya Sheva Midos, which are the 7 emotional breakups of sphirot, to sort of say, components of the person. And because our emotions are very separate, right? You say, what happened? You were so nice yesterday. How could you be so aggressive today? Yesterday you didn't show compassion. Today you show compassion. Emotions, we could have, our emotions are running separately. So therefore, this is this chalkus, the separation. And if you put them all together, you have 7 different emotions. So you can't say shana, you have to say shanim plural. Ad lekavin havchin. They go into 2 different categories. Chesed and gvura. Bina, you have judgment, rachman, compassion. Judgment demands actual, what did the person do? Compassion is compassion. Chesed is even more, just giving. Namr b'hem sheva and therefore it says plural lashon rab. U'moisif in the Rebbe in the ad in the Maamar Messiah, the pasuk continues Shnei Chayei. So what's the fine? So what? So we say that this is the life of Sarah. We have to apply it to ourselves. That we have within ourselves the keser, the 100, which is the singular, which is representing. Let's just skip the brackets for a second. It's talking about the desire and want of a person. Then we have the intellect, although it's two components of wisdom and understanding. They're so interrelated to the also one, so dependent on each other. They can't separate them. Then you have our emotional breakup, which is 7. And then we say, this is who we are. Shnei Chayei is to say, yes, we have a lot going on in us. But this is who the person is. And not just this is the person is. We have to know that in all these 3 components, we have to find life. And when we're using, wherever we're using, that at the moment, that is your life. That's where you're at. And Shnei Chayei means there's no higher part and lower part. That's what we're going to get to. The Shnei Chayei gives value to no matter where you're holding in your life. You should be 100% there. And that's the most important place, the most important part of yourself that has to be functioning now. It says, this is the life of Sarah. When a person completes within themselves, the Meya Shana, the 100, which we said is again is the desire and want. Keser is Tanig and Ratzah. The Esrim Shana, which is the wisdom and understanding. And the Sheva Shanim and our emotional breakup that has, yes, very separate components in emotions. Then when we have that in completeness, then we could elevate into a higher level. That absolutely has no division at all. This is because it's that oneness of focus. Although there's a lot of things that we may be using to get to that focus, but the focus unites, and we could finish off in saying these are the life of Sarah in a singular statement. But we don't even mention a number at them. It's not about, we don't say, my wisdom is now invested in this. My understanding, my desire, this is my desire, this is my want, this is how I emotionally feel. You're so focused on the service, and it's just using your different talents and different expressions to do the service. You get elevated. There's no longer numbers. It's just about the job. It's just about the connection. Like it says before, one mat is self. What do you count? Okay. We have a few days. We're not going to rush this one because I think the message is beautiful. As we get through the Maamar, we'll stop over here and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for joining.